Mark's a theist con from New Jersey, would like to describe why his belief in God is reinforced by personal experience with passing of loved ones. Hey, Mark.
Hi, Matt. Hi, Mr. Matt. Hi, Miss Promise. Mrs. Promise.
Hey there.
To jump right in, no background story, Roman Catholic, Northern New Jersey. Had an experience with my father and grandmother, learning my fallacies, so not appeal to pity. Thank you for the compliment. And I saw some stories and read some and not super well read in the Bible. Started to pull me back as my mother sat beside me on both of those pathways and saw them pull at their clothes, heard a bunch of stories about it, read only a little bit about it, and it's starting to pull me back into that faith. And
I'm sorry, I missed something. Did you say pulling up their clothes?
Yeah, pulling at their clothes, and if they want to leave, I was told some stories.
Okay.
I'm not as educated.
I'm sorry, Mark.
And yes, sir.
I'm sorry, Mark. I thought you said pulling up their clothes, and I thought I missed a part of the story where people were naked, and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Okay.
No, I apologize.
So you've had conversations. You've had conversations with family members, and they're uncomfortable having the discussions.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I'm caught up. Keep going.
The end. Yes, and at the end of these two wonderful individuals' lives, stories were told to me next to me in these uncomfortable moments with the living, telling me how, sorry, that's long, and telling me how they want to stay if they are not passing and not pulling at their clothes, and then they want to go if they're pulling at their clothes, and that then happened in an experience with me, in front of me, within a year, with both separate parents, one parent, one grandmother, and watching that happen, and now making me feel a little like that's possibly true. And I would like to be questioned about that, and I'm sorry if I'm saying anything in an inappropriate way or misunderstanding.
I have no idea what you're actually talking about.
Yeah, I think I'm confused. Are you saying you had an experience where you felt someone tugging at your clothes, or like, I'm just really confused?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry, a little nervous. I apologize to both.
No, it's okay. We'll ask questions to understand.
Yes. When watching both pass at their last moments, they were both pulling at their clothes, one more than another, one going quicker than the other, and family members telling me that's them trying to go to God, and then reading scriptures and telling me things in the Catholic Church on this is how it goes. And one happened and the other happened the way they described it, somewhat read it to me, which then I don't have an appropriate word and I apologize. Freaked me out a little bit.
I'm understanding now more what you're saying. My first question to you would be, if you knew for a 100% fact that there was no God, then what would you say the explanation for this happening was?
I can make up an explanation of oxygen deprivation, something not metaphysical, I'm very sorry, physical. I've never seen that act before, so I haven't seen that specific act happen in the living, but I'm also know that I'm not a biologist, so there might be some other reasons for sure. There could be other reasons, yes. Sorry if I'm answering incorrectly.
I mean, for me, I would just automatically also think maybe it's discomfort, confusion, some kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, when you're like a sensory thing, you're feeling stuff on you when you're, who knows what all is the brain is going through when it's starting to approach death. So to me, it would be the biggest leap ever to get from that to therefore there's a God and it's this specific God. It makes perfect sense to me that your family members who are adhering to this dogma decided that that must mean something that goes along with their beliefs. So, of course, they are telling you that what else are they going to say? It's just an odd thing to point to be evidence for really anything.
It reminds me of standing in church. Now, I was a Southern Baptist primarily, but I also went to Pentecostal churches on rare occasions. But it reminds me of standing in church and everybody's singing and praising. And you feel a sense of elation and you might get goosebumps and get emotional. And the people around me would describe that experience as being filled with the Holy Spirit. And as a kid, and I suppose as an, it would have been the same as an adult if I didn't have the tools. Having all the adults around you saying, we have more experience with this religious stuff than you do, and this is what's known as being filled with the Holy Spirit, and this is when, and then they go on and describe it. It's the best explanation I have for what I felt and what other people felt at that time. But it doesn't in any way demonstrate that their claim about the Holy Spirit is true. And once you realize that all they're doing is saying, this experience that feels weird, that's God, and absolutely nothing else. They're not presenting evidence that the experience is from God. And in this case that you're talking about, I think it's worse because here's someone who is dying, whose brain is not operating and functioning normally, and who may be desperate to go and meet the God that they believe in and doing things actively to go to God. They want to be there. And all of that can be true even if there's no God. So why does family members telling you about the Holy Spirit, telling you that they're trying to reach God when they're dying, why does that make it true or even reasonable?
I appreciate the story, and I kind of needed to hear that. I hope you're both okay with that. I'm just looking for a different piece of the answer there. I'm sorry, not the answer. You're correct. I do think that just feel something that maybe I was open to and trying to bounce back to something logical, and I kind of just needed to hear that. And I'm not defending or anything. I apologize. It's just
no, you're fine.
Towards something, and I was looking for something else to be. I needed something else to balance out what the possibilities were through others. That's all.
I understand. And when we're grieving, that's what we want to do is to latch on to familiar, comforting things, and we want answers and all of that. And so that makes sense. But I appreciate you wanting to bring some reality into the situation when it might be easier not to. But I just went and looked up some resources from different hospice care sites, and they're all talking about this thing called terminal restlessness, terminal restlessness. And pulling at clothes is really, really common for people who are in the late stages of life. And it's often due to infection, uncontrolled pain, dehydration. So go read about it. I think if that's going to help you too, like maybe just go learn more about it, and that might help you. Also, you might have to settle with that was interesting, and I don't know why that happened,
I have one last thought on this.
I will read it. Yeah. Yes,
I'm sorry, Mark. Go ahead.
No. Continue, please.
So here's the one thing that I constantly try and encourage people to do. Not just ask yourself the kind of questions from a skeptical standpoint that Promise and I were talking about. Like, if you knew for certain I think Promise's questions, there's a number of things Promise has said in the last 36 hours or so that I think are just fucking brilliant. One of them I need to tell you about later, but not you, Mark, but Promise. But the in engaging in the skepticism of saying, hey, if you knew for sure there wasn't a God, what explanations would you come up with? Is one way to kind of to skew you that way. But the other thing is this. Let's assume you're right. Let's assume that the clutching at the clothing, while it in a rational sense shouldn't be sufficient to confirm a God, is in fact happening because a God exists. If in fact that were happening because a God exists, what else would need to be true? And why wouldn't God be more comforting of these people in their final moments and more open and engaging with the people standing around who are confused about those final moments? Why does it need to be a mystery that you kind of got to feel, and get a little, maybe it's like that? What kind of God that supposedly loves us operates in a way where if you tilt your head and you squint and you pay really close attention, you could kind of see something that maybe might be tied to a God. Don't just, if you knew for sure that there's no God, how would you explain it? If in fact there was a God, is this what we would see? Is this how God would interact with people, with dubious, oh, we don't want to tell it. We don't want to prove too much that God exists. So what we'll do is, for people who are dying, we'll let them kind of flounder around with their clothes, because that'll give people just enough to tie that to God without making it obvious. We don't want to be obvious. Asking yourself those kind of questions is, does this make sense? Because the God of the Bible and the God that various people advocate for makes zero sense to me, given the facts of the world.
Can I ask may I say one last statement, possibly?
Sure.
The mental gymnastics of this, and I do feel honestly a little bit defective that I can't get to something that sounds so logically quicker, and as two skeptics and very good talkers and really good questioners, and I'm really glad I called, and I really appreciate your time. Does it take time to be skeptical about experience based on all of our own indoctrination? Because it's taking me some time to get to hear skepticism or your good questions better. And is that something that is just mental gymnastics in your opinion, or in your own experiences, or does it take time? Is it a learned behavior? I kind of see that, but when those situations happen and the indoctrination along with some other things said in these specific times and being very emotional, you almost kind of need to hear that. I understand the question, and I clearly understand, and I think I answered promises honestly. But is there a time frame for both of you that takes you to be more skeptical quicker? And I think that's my question, and I'm sorry if I didn't pose it as well. I apologize for that.
You're doing great.
It can take time. Learning to reason quickly and efficiently is a skill that you hone. But if you go back to like the first episodes that I ever did of that other show, I wasn't as good at some things then as I am now. And it would be very sad if I hadn't gotten better at some things over the last 20 years. There are other things that I'm probably not as good at that don't have as much to do with the specifics or the rational part, but have more to do with the empathy and compassion part, because after 20 years of having people just repeatedly lie and refuse to have anything like an honest conversation is incredibly exhausting. However, yes, you can train. Yes, you can get better. Cut yourself some slack. Give yourself a break. You're asking the right questions. You're considering the right things. And you may or may not develop a real solid skeptical line of thought. But if you don't, it's important for people to understand and apply skepticism everywhere in their life. But not being the best skeptic doesn't mean that you've failed everything, because at the end of the day, there's real important shit. There's important stuff in my life that has nothing to do with whether or not there's a God, or whether or not there's an absolute foundation for morality, or whether or not this fallacy or that fallacy might have been used for something. There's real stuff I got to deal with. And so nobody's expected to be an expert on everything. And so Promise and I not only found our way out of religions, we did it with the help of a bunch of people who came before us who said all the shit that we're saying now, or most of it. And
my help was you, so.
Although the thing that Promise said the other day was great about teaching kids, because people are making the excuse that God couldn't outlaw slavery because the people back then just were too primitive to understand this outlawing of slavery. So he allowed it to exist for a little while. And her point was, if you're teaching little kids and they don't understand why they shouldn't hit each other, you don't just tell them, go ahead, hit each other. We'll teach you later why it's wrong. That's an absolutely brilliant assessment in response to the criticism of, it's an excuse. People are like, oh, God couldn't have told him slavery was wrong. And my response had always been, he can tell them not to eat shellfish and not to wear mixed fabrics, but he can't tell them not to own people as property. Are you fucking kidding me? And instead, I will be using Promise as an example about,
Wow.
even if they didn't understand that, you can teach them. What kind of failure is this God that can't teach someone how and why they shouldn't own people? And even if they don't fully understand why they shouldn't, they at least know that this is the way things are, that you should not do that. But anyway, that was me going kind of off track there. I'm sorry, Mark.
I'll take it. Mark, I'll just add this last little thing in. First of all, like what Matt said, don't give yourself such a hard time. I think you should be recognizing how amazing it is that you're showing up honestly in this conversation, that you're wanting to ask questions, especially if you're living in the US and you have a family that's already hyper religious and you grew up this way. It's a wonder that you're asking these questions. I mean, that's already amazing. So that's incredible. Also, I do think it's a muscle. I think it's something we develop over time. Ask Matt about the first time I ever did this show with him versus how I'm doing now. You know, we get better at these things the more that we do them. So the more you engage in skepticism, the easier it's going to come to you, and you're going to start figuring out how to apply it to all kinds of areas of your life. For me, another thing that really helped is I noticed there were some areas that I could pinpoint in my life that I had always applied skepticism to. And I started learning how to acknowledge that so that then I could recognize what that looked like in those scenarios and bring it over into the areas of my life where I had never applied skepticism. So you might want to start there. I ask yourself, where have I always applied skepticism and reason and logic and just been really, you know, more on the pragmatic or more on the practical, logical side of things, and go from there. But I think you're already on a great track, and I've really appreciated this phone call, Mark.
Both of you, thank you very much. I'm trying to find building blocks to kind of stave away something that doesn't feel real, and experience is hard. And I'm a little bashful to say that out loud because something triggers that I don't understand at the moment. And I'm looking to speed that up and not go back to maybe what I was taught, which I think you both know, which is Christian faith and Catholicism. And I appreciate the conversation, and I don't need to say much more or waste any of your time. And I really appreciate it.
All good. Mark, have you heard of Recovering from Religion? They have their website, recoveringfromreligion.org. And I would check that out if I were you. They have some amazing resources that'll help you on your path forward.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Mark. Have a good night. Hey, look what happens when there's a theist. Now, granted, to be fair, Mark seems to be possibly engaged in some sort of deconstruction, like, or at least, you know, questioning, or, you know, but it's really, you know, I've done this for 20 years. I'm going to fuck stuff up. Don't get me wrong. That's a given. Like every single show, I'm screwing something up. But after 20 years, the odds are pretty good, I would say, that given me versus the average caller, I have a better understanding of the subject and what questions to ask to get the call to a point where we can figure out where we disagree and why. And that is my primary goal. I'm not here. I would, if in fact there's a God, I want to know. I want to know if I'm wrong. And that requires some demonstration that I'm likely to be wrong, that I am wrong, and how you can tell. Those things are part of it. I don't want to be wrong. If in fact there's a God, I'd like to know. I don't think it's a good idea to believe just because, oh, well, this is what I need in order to avoid nihilism. I mean, that's the same reason some people drink to oblivion. That to me isn't a good thing. That's like saying, oh, if I'm not completely drunk out of my mind, I have to think about how bad Trump is. So there you go. Drinking is the solution to Trump. No, it's not. And religion isn't the solution to nihilism. It's not the solution to anything.
Hey, what's up? I'm glad you enjoyed that clip of people talking to each other. I'm Jimmy and this is Eric. And well, we'd really love it if you would support us. Where can they support us, Eric? Where would they do that?
I don't know, Jimmy, because I don't have the notes on me right now.
This is too long. The outros
Patreon.
have to be short. Patreon.com/call the line.